Welcome, you're safe now. The day has ended, the world has dimmed, and somewhere in the quiet folds of night, ancient flames still flicker. Let your thoughts drift, not forward, not toward the future, but backwards softly into the past. Before light bulbs buzzed, before neon signs glared into the dark, there was only one kind of light that danced with the shadow's candlelight. Not just wax and wick, but warmth, memory, ritual, comfort, a soft reminder that even in the darkest corners of history there was always a flame, always someone kneeling, lighting, watching. Tonight, I want to take you on a journey through the hushed glow of time itself. We'll walk slowly through ancient homes, through forgotten temples and sunken palaces. We'll listen to how the ancients worshipped fire, fed it, whispered to it, and sometimes feared it. From the silent tombs of Egypt to the smoky hearths of Viking longhouses, from the oil lamps of Mesopotamia to the sacred candles of Byzantium, and as the firelight flickers gently your thoughts. We'll slow because this isn't just history. This is sleep history. This is peace. This is warmth. This is where the stories breathe slowly like embers in the dark. So lie back, close your eyes if you like. Let the flame pull you in, and let me tell you a story about the soft, golden magic of candlelight in ancient times. When fire first tamed the darkness, before the wheel, before the sword, before the written word, or the painted cave walls, there was fire. It was not ours at first. It belonged to the world, to lightning strikes that scorched the dry grasslands, to molten rivers that bled from the earth's angry belly, to the sun itself. And for the earliest of our ancestors, fire was mystery and terror and awe. It danced and hissed and devoured. It glowed in the dark where nothing else did, and when it came, uninvited, it came with destruction. But there must have been a first moment, a quiet moment, when someone, some long, forgotten soul, crouched beside the glowing coals of a recent wildfire and reached out their hand. Maybe they didn't know what they were doing. Maybe they were just cold or curious, but in that moment, that hushed, trembling moment, something changed forever. Because when they cradled that ember, when they carried it home in a hollow, doubt stone or a curled-up piece of bark, when they fed it, fanned it, protected it, fire became more than a force of nature, it became ours. It's almost impossible to imagine what the world was like before that. A world without fire. No warmth on a bitter night, no cooked meat, no defense against prowling creatures whose eyes glowed in the dark, no light save the moon and the stars. When the sun set, it must have felt like the world was holding its breath until morning. A long, silent waiting, but then came the ember, and with it a glow, a promise, something alive and delicate, something that needed attention. Fire is strange that way. It is strong but never invincible. It flickers, it falters. It dies without care. And so early humans had to learn not only how to take it, but how to keep it. That was its own kind of love. At first, fire had to be borrowed. There was no such thing as a spark struck from stone or a flame conjured from friction. It had to be found, preserved, passed from one camp to another like a secret, and if it went out, if the flame died, the darkness came back. So imagine them, the first fire, keepers, likely women, likely the elders of the clan, who would sit in silence and watch the flame, who would feed it bits of wood, bits of bone, dry moss, cracked leaves, who would whisper stories as they did, maybe about the stars above, or the beasts outside, or the ancestors who walked before them. And the fire would answer in crackles and soft sighs. That's how stories began, some believe, around the fire. In its flickering light, shadows danced across cave walls, and those shadows became stories, ghosts, God's heroes. Fire didn't just change how we ate, or how we stayed warm. It changed how we thought. It gave us a reason to gather. It gave us time to imagine. They say that fire extended the human day. That's such a quiet phrase, but if you think about it, it means everything. Before fire, night was the end. Of movement, of making, of meaning, but with fire suddenly there were hours more, hours to sit, to speak, to dream, and the fire didn't judge, it didn't interrupt, it just listened. Over time, fire became sacred, not because it was feared, though it certainly was, but because it gave so much: life, warmth, protection, belonging. You could see it from afar, a small glow in a great wilderness, a sign that someone was there. A camp, a family, a home, and when you looked into it, it looked back. Even today, we feel that pull, that calmness, that trance. You don't look at a fire, you fall into it. Something in us still remembers those ancient nights. The silence broken only by the pop of sap, the flutter of flame, the warmth against your face while the cold wind presses against your back. That contrast, warmth in the dark, is one of the oldest comforts we know. And as people settled, as they built homes and hearths and temples, fire came with them. The flickering light moved from the wild forests into the center of things, into caves, into huts, into stone hearths. It became domestic, but it never lost its magic. In ancient Mesopotamia, fire was the breath of the gods. In Egypt, it followed the sun god Ra on his nightly journey through the underworld. In Greece, the hearth flame of Hestia was never allowed to go out, not once for centuries. A constant, living symbol of the city's soul. But all of that began with a moment, with someone crouching beside a fire not their own and making it theirs. We don't know who it was, we'll never know, but they were the first to tame the darkness, and it wasn't done with violence, or power, or tools. It was done with stillness, with patience, with a soft hand feeding the flame. What a strange kind of bravery that was. Even now, when we light a candle, there's something reverent about it. We lower our voices, we move slower, our eyes soften. We remember, even if only in the bones, that this tiny light is not just light. It is legacy, it is memory. It is a miracle passed down through 1,000 lifetimes. Fire is older than history, older than kings, older than war, but it made all those things possible. Without fire, there is no forge, no written word, no wheel, no civilization, and it all began, not with conquest, but with care. So tonight, as the fire crackles gently beside you, you're not just listening to sound. You're listening to history, a language older than speech, a lullaby whispered in wood smoke and flame. Let yourself feel it not with your mind, but with something deeper, some quiet part of you that still remembers the long nights. The soft firelight, the faces gathered close, the hush that falls when the last ember glows. Because this is not just a story. It's a return to the very first warmth, to the very first light, to the very first time the darkness was no longer something to fear, but something to sit with, to watch, to share. And isn't that what we do now, all these centuries later? We gather, even in silence, around this gentle flame. We listen, we remember, we rest. And so let the fire burn softly beside you tonight. Let your thoughts flicker like shadows on stone. You are warm now, you are safe. The darkness is not empty. It is ancient. It is full of dreams. And somewhere, far, far behind you, someone long ago is still feeding that first flame. How early humans used hollowed shells for oil lamps. The world was darker then. Not just darker in the way we think of it now, a place before electricity, before cities spilled their lights across the sky like spilled honey. No, it was truly dark. A world where the sun's setting wasn't just a change of tone, but a full surrender. Light vanished, and with it, so did safety, so did warmth, so did any sense of comfort. But even then, there was something in us that didn't want to surrender the day so easily. They were clever, those early humans, quietly, patiently clever. Their minds were still learning to shape the world around them, but they were always watching, always observing, the way oil seeped from seeds, the way it clung to meat and plant, the way fire would flare up when something oily was near. And so it must have happened, perhaps again by accident, or perhaps through a slowly unfolding understanding that one day, Someone dipped a wisp of moss or bark into something slick, something oily, placed it into a small, hollow, doubt shell, and struck a spark nearby. It lit, and it stayed lit. That moment, that subtle flickering moment, would have seemed almost magical, because it was different from a campfire. This wasn't a pile of wood burning fast and furious. This was a quiet, contained light, a flame that could be carried, watched, controlled. It was a lamp, not a lamp like we know today. No polished glass, no neat wick, no elegant fixture, just a small rounded shell, or a carved piece of soft stone, or a bit of hardened clay shaped by hand. The hollow in the center held oil, sometimes animal fat, sometimes seed oil, sometimes melted drippings from earlier fires. The wick was simple, a twist of dried grass, or a tiny cord of braided hair. The design was rough, but the effect was profound, because now, for the first time, the night could be softened. It didn't have to be defeated, not overcome, but soothed. Tamed, imagine it, inside a small cave, the rock walls cool and close. A tiny flame glows from the belly of a shell. It casts a soft circle of golden light. Shadows shimmer around it, moving gently, as if they too are alive. A child sits near it, eyes wide with wonder. A mother hums. An elder leans in to speak, their face lined, their voice like wind through old trees. The lamp burns quietly, no smoke, no roar, just the slow breathing of a flame held in stillness. It changed everything. With oil lamps, we could tell stories long after the sun had gone. We could paint cave walls with ochre and ash. We could shape tools in the evening hours, hands steady under the soft glow. We could care for the sick. We could soothe the frightened. And perhaps most sacred of all, we could grieve or celebrate under a flame that felt intimate, personal. Unlike fire, which demanded space and caution, the oil lamp was close, comforting, like holding light in the palm of your hand. In the ancient world, lamps became symbols as much as tools. In burial sites from tens of thousands of years ago, archaeologists have found remnants of primitive oil lamps placed gently beside the dead. Sometimes still filled with oil, sometimes burned completely down, but always with care, as if to say, "Take this light with you into the unknown." A final gift. Later, in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt, oil lamps became more elaborate, molded in clay, sometimes decorated with small carvings or pressed patterns. The flame was still humble, small, yellow, and quick to dance with the slightest breeze. But now it had shape, identity. People began to believe that fire had spirit, that each flame had a presence of its own. You weren't just lighting a lamp. You were waking something, inviting it in. It's a beautiful idea, isn't it? That light is a guest, and that even in a world of deep darkness, that guest could be welcomed into the quiet corners of night. The Romans carried this belief even further. Their lamps, called lucerne, were crafted with care. Some were shaped like animals, others like gods. Some had 2 or 3 spouts, each holding a separate wick. They were used not only in homes, but in bathhouses, temples, and even on the streets. Tiny flames dotting the stone paths as night settled over the empire. But long before that refinement, there was the shell. A simple, sea-washed shell plucked from a beach by someone who saw not just food or decoration, but a vessel, a shape that could cradle light. The curve of the shell was natural, easy to carry, and deep enough to hold oil. And when the wick was lit, the flame would flicker softly, reflected against the smooth inner walls of the shell, like sunlight trapped in the curl of an ocean wave. We often think of invention as something sudden, loud, a eureka, a moment, but the truth is quieter, softer. It's a slow noticing, a patient experiment, a willingness to try again and again and again. Early humans didn't shout their discoveries. They whispered them, passed them down, showed their children how to place the wick just right, how to refill the oil, how to shade the flame from the wind using a cupped hand. how to say thank you in their own quiet way to the light that kept them company. They didn't know science, but they knew warmth, and if you close your eyes now, you can almost see it. A small shelter, maybe a lean-to of branches, or a hidden nook in the rocks, and inside, the steady glow of a single shell lamp. Someone lies curled beside it, their breath slow, their dreams just beginning. Outside, the wind hums through trees. Far off, the cry of some wild thing echoes into the night. But inside there is peace, there is flame. There is history being made softly, gently, without a single word. We are still carrying that same light. When you strike a match, light a candle, or turn on a lantern, that instinct, that reaching into the dark, that small defiance of the void, it comes from them. From the ones who first saw fire not as threat, but as companion. And how strange, how quietly miraculous, that one of the first tools to hold that companion was a shell, something made by the sea, something made for a completely different purpose, and yet it fit perfectly. A vessel made by nature, repurposed by human hands into a cradle for fire, a cradle for comfort, a cradle for stories. So as you lie here now, listening to the fire's hush, know this, there are flames in your past, not just behind you in time, but in your very blood. Each of us a descendant of fire, keepers, each of us shaped by the need for light in the dark, and somewhere deep in memory you still carry that shell. You still know how to hold it, still know how to fill it, still know how to shelter the flame with both hands and wait. Tonight, as your thoughts begin to slow, imagine that glow. Not a roaring blaze, not a modern light, but a soft, flickering oil lamp lighting the quiet space around your soul. Safe, warm, ancient, the night is here. But so is the flame, small but steady, just as it was in the beginning. Candle offerings in ancient Egyptian tombs. There is a stillness in tombs that defies time. The air, though stale and undisturbed for thousands of years, carries a kind of memory. A silence so deep that it hums not with noise, but with presence. Stone walls press in gently, painted with stories that the living no longer tell. Figures of gods and pharaohs stretch across the surfaces, caught mid. Gesture in pigments of red ochre, deep blue, and golden yellow. The scenes are frozen, and yet somehow they breathe. Deep within these tombs, past the dusty corridors and sealed antechambers, past the niches filled with figurines and the walls inked with spells, there are offerings. Not just treasures, not just amulets or jars of sacred oils, but something quieter, softer, something that was never meant to shine in this world at all. Candles, or what we might call candles, little vessels filled with oil, or tallow, or wax, each with a wick and a purpose, placed lovingly, reverently, at the feet of statues, set in corners to light the journey into death, nestled into alcoves like tiny suns asleep in stone. They weren't meant to last, and yet their soot still marks the walls. To the ancient Egyptians, light was not just convenience. It was sacred, it was protection, a force that reached across the veil of death. Fire belonged to the gods, the sun was a god, the stars were gods, and the act of making light, of carrying flame into the dark, was a kind of prayer. A way to say, here I offer you vision, I offer you warmth, I offer you a piece of the sun to guide your way. Imagine, for a moment, the ritual. The tomb is nearly complete. The workers have laid the last bricks, painted the final glyphs, set the jars of honey, bread, and wine into their resting places. The body of the noble, or the scribe, or the priestess, lies still in its ornate sarcophagus, wrapped tightly in linen, scented with resin and myrrh. Outside a small procession forms. Priests in leopard, skin cloaks chant softly. Family members carry baskets. Others walk slowly, each holding something small, a flickering light cupped carefully in the palm. These are the candle offerings. They're not candles as we know them today, the elegant tapers or store, bought pillars. They're humble, Shallow clay lamps, sometimes molded in the shape of a lotus blossom or a scarab beetle. The oil inside might be made from animal fat, or from the precious seeds of the balanos tree, pressed into liquid light. A twisted flax fiber serves as the wick. The flame is small but steady. One by one, the lights are brought inside. They don't flood the tomb with brightness. That's not the point. Instead, they create pools of warm, flickering gold. Each flame dances softly on the wall, casting shadows of gods and animals. The figures seem to move. Anubis, the jackal, headed guide of souls. Isis, mother and mourner. Ra, the sun god, sailing his boat across the sky. In the firelight, they become alive. The candles are set in rows around the coffin near the offering table, sometimes placed in little niches built right into the stone, as if the tomb itself was made to hold them. And when all are lit, there is a silence, a moment where the living say goodbye, but the candles stay. Long after the people have gone, long after the tomb has been sealed and the desert winds have blown away the footprints, the flames will burn down slowly until they flicker into nothing. But that's not the end. The soot remains. The smoke leaves stains on the walls. The little lamps, made of clay and devotion, stay nestled in place, waiting. And so, thousands of years later, when modern archaeologists open these tombs carefully, respectfully, they sometimes find them still there. The lamps, the carbon traces, a frozen moment of ancient ritual, a kind of kindness left in the dark. Why did they leave candles? Because the journey after death was not instant. In Egyptian belief, the soul passed through a long and perilous path in the afterlife. It crossed rivers, entered gates guarded by beasts, was questioned by gods, weighed by the feather of Maat. To make this journey, the soul needed help, food, words, spells, protection, but above all, it needed light. The flame was a guide, not just for the soul, but for the gods too. The light was an invitation, a beacon, a symbol that said, "This person is remembered, this person mattered, come find them, watch over them." Carry them home, and so the candles burned. Some tombs had only a few, others had dozens. In royal tombs, those of queens, viziers, even young kings, the lights might have been arranged in ceremonial patterns. Some scholars believe certain constellations were mapped with the placement of these lamps, reflecting the stars that shone above the Nile. Above the land of the living, it's a beautiful thought that the night sky was mirrored underground, light above, light below, and in between the soul moving slowly, cradled in glow. But not all lights were left behind. Some candles were carried by mourners back to the world above, carried home still burning, placed in family shrines, set near household statues of Osiris or Thoth, as if the light could keep the memory warm, as if the flame held a piece of the departed spirit, small but eternal. There's something deeply human about that, something timeless. We still do it in our own way. We light candles for birthdays, for anniversaries, for losses. We place them in windows, in churches, on graves, not because they do something practical, but because they mean something. Because light is never just light. It is presence, it is hope, it is love made visible, and the Egyptians understood this better than most. In the temples of Karnak and Dendera, sacred flame was tended day and night, never allowed to go out. It was the physical presence of divinity, a living thing. Even in times of war, of drought, of collapse, the flame remained. Lit by hand, fed with oil, watched carefully, as if it might speak. So of course they would send their dead into the afterlife with candles. What else could they give? What better gift than light? In a world ruled by the sun, obsessed with the cycles of day and night, the candle was a fragment of that great order. A miniature sun, soft and personal, and when placed in a tomb where the sun would never reach again, it became a promise. That light could follow, that death was not the end of the glow. And so here we are, thousands of years later, lying still in the hush of night. The world outside is quiet, the fire beside us burns softly, Shadows move on the ceiling, and something in us remembers. Not with words, not even with images, but with feeling, we remember the reverence of light, the need to offer it, to carry it, to protect it. And if you listen closely in that space between waking and dreaming, you might hear it. The rustle of linen, the shuffle of sand, the soft chant of priests as they place the last flame inside a stone tomb. A hush, a prayer. Then the sound of the lid closing, the torch fading, and darkness, warm, complete, and full of promise. But the candles still burn in memory, and they always will. The scented flames of Cleopatra's chambers. It begins with a flicker. Not sharp, not sudden, but slow like a yawn caught between shadows. A match doesn't strike. A lighter doesn't click. This was a time before such things. A time when fire was coaxed into being like a shy creature, with gentle breath, with twisted linen soaked in oil, with fingers that knew how to wait. In the dim chambers of Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt, ruler of the Nile, the light did not blaze. It bloomed. You can almost see it now, the soft gold of it licking the air, reflected against copper trays, mirrored faintly in the polished obsidian of carved cosmetic jars. The room glows like honey poured over stone. 1,000 tiny shadows rise and fall along the curves of alabaster walls. This is not harsh light. It is a perfume of light, a candle-lit hush, stretching like silk across every surface. But this isn't ordinary fire. These flames carry scent, a luxury, a message, a memory. The air in Cleopatra's private quarters is thick, not with smoke, but with aroma. And not just one aroma, several, each layered with purpose. There is myrrh, dark and resinous, curling slowly up from a low, burning lamp by the bed. There is frankincense, white and sharp, lifting from a bronze dish near the archway. And from the scented candles placed near the queen's bath, there is the faint sweetness of lotus, of almond oil, and something floral that no longer has a name, a bloom that faded from the world 2,000 years ago, but lives on in dream. The candles are not maspra, juiced. They are not dipped and dried in factories. Each one is made by hand. The wax, sometimes beeswax, sometimes a blend of tallow and perfume, is melted slowly over low flame, stirred with herbs or crushed petals. The wicks are braided from linen scraps, bleached in the sun. When they burn, they don't just illuminate. They transform a room, yes, but also a mood, a moment, a mind, because Cleopatra understood something that many others in power did not. That fire, when touched by scent, becomes a kind of spell. It softens the will, slows the breath, turns resistance into fascination. To walk into her presence was not merely to see a queen. It was to be enveloped. The flame might have been the first thing her visitors noticed, its golden flutter across her face, the way it caught in her kohl-lined eyes like sunlight on deep water. But the scent came next, always. It wound its way into the air like a ribbon, sweet, earthy, unfamiliar. It was designed to do more than impress. It was designed to linger, in the clothes, in the hair, in the mind. Scent, after all, is memory's oldest companion. And Cleopatra was, above all, a master of memory. She did not need to roar. She whispered. She scented the air. She lit her chambers with flame that carried meaning. When she met with Roman envoys, her candles burned with cinnamon bark. A rare spice carried hundreds of miles along desert trade routes. When she held private audiences with poets and philosophers, she favored sandalwood and rose, calming, intelligent, quietly seductive. And when she prepared for the night, the scent changed. Lavender, perhaps, crushed henna leaf, a delicate smoke made from ground blue lotus and soaked papyrus, a narcotic mixture, some say, that blurred the edge between dream and wakefulness. No one knows the exact recipes. The formulas were guarded secrets, passed down through temple priests and royal perfumers. Some were lost when the library of Alexandria fell. Others were buried in tombs with the noble dead. But the effects are echoed even now. To light a scented candle in the darkness is still a gesture of reverence, of invitation, of transformation, and Cleopatra, in all her silk-robed silence, knew that. She didn't walk into a room and demand attention. She prepared the space like a stage, the draperies, the oils, the carefully placed lamps, the candles burning on polished stands. The flickering light drew the eye, the scent captured the mind, and before a single word was spoken, the audience had already bent toward her, as if leaning toward flame. History remembers her as seductive, but seduction is a shallow word for what she practiced. It wasn't merely beauty. It was atmosphere, it was theater, it was sensory storytelling, and the candles were her quiet narrators. In the corner of her chamber stood a tall brass stand, shaped like a lotus in bloom, with petals outstretched. Upon each petal, a small, scented candle. They would be lit in succession, not all at once. First, the base to warm the room. Then, the middle tier to deepen the perfume. Then, the top, a signal that the queen would soon appear. Time, too, was measured in fire. Candles marked the hours of her preparations. How long to steep in oils? How long to rest? How long to rehearse what must be said and what must be left unsaid? Some evenings she would light a single candle and sit beside it for hours, saying nothing at all. Just watching, listening to the way the flame moved, steady at first, then wilder as the wax shrank. The way the shadows danced along the mosaic floor. The way her own reflection shimmered in the burnished silver mirror, not still, but alive. Fluid, like a dream just barely remembered. Those were the evenings of quiet, of thought, of waiting. Even queens wait, and always the flame stayed with her. It kept her company in solitude. It softened the voices of doubt. It slowed time when time needed slowing. In the glow of the candle, decisions felt less sharp. Possibilities opened. Plans whispered themselves into being. And perhaps that is why, even now, her name feels like a scent, lingering, mysterious, hard to describe but impossible to forget. She was flame and shadow, perfume and silence, not merely a queen, but a presence curated like a temple, lit like a sanctuary. The scented candles were never a luxury. They were her tools, her companions, her co-conspirators, and in some quiet way, her comfort. Because even the powerful need peace, even the great need softness, and even Cleopatra, for all her fierce command of men and kingdoms, had nights where she needed to dim the world, to turn down the roar, to retreat into scent and flicker, into the hush of warm wax, into the arms of silence. So tonight, as your own candle burns gently nearby, think of her. Not the queen atop a throne, not the legend etched into marble, but the woman alone in her chambers, bathed in amber light, surrounded by gentle smoke that carries secrets older than empires. She breathes slowly, she closes her eyes, and the room holds its breath with her. A flame glows at her side, small, scented, ancient, and through that flame she dreams, and now so may you. Roman candela, wax, wicks, and whispers. Somewhere, in the hush between evening and nightfall, a small light appears on a Roman street. It's not loud, it does not announce itself. It flickers quietly behind a cloth, draped window, its golden glow spilling softly onto the stone floor. You wouldn't even notice it unless you were looking for it. A warm thread of light in a city preparing to fall asleep. But that single candle, or candela as they called it, was part of something much larger. A ritual, a rhythm. A way that the ancient Romans pulled light from darkness, over and over again, as if to say, we are not done yet. The night will not have us just yet. Candles were more than just tools to them. They were timekeepers. They were companions, and in the quiet corners of their busy lives, they were a comfort. Rome itself was rarely still. It bustled, horses clattered, bakers woke before the sun, senators debated long after it had set. The city throbbed with life, too much to be limited by daylight, and so the people learned to stretch their hours, and to do that, they needed fire. They had torches, of course, and oil lamps, elegant, clever, carved from clay or bronze, often with the faces of gods peering out from their bellies. But the candle, the humble candle, became something personal. It was made with care. Most were crafted from sebum animal fat, which burned with a faint but steady flame. The wealthy preferred beeswax, cleaner, sweeter, smelling less smoky. Candles weren't always straight. Some were twisted, braided like rope. Others were poured into molds. The wick, simple flax or papyrus, sat centered in the wax, trimmed just so. If too short, the light would sputter. If too long, it would smoke. The process was passed down in families, learned by apprentices, whispered by market vendors who swore their candles lasted longer than anyone else's. The word candela itself comes from the Latin candia, meaning to shine, to glow. But it also gave birth to something else, candelabrum, the branching stand that held many candles, a forest of flame, and from there to the modern chandelier, and the verb to illuminate. In Rome, illumination wasn't just physical. It was emotional, symbolic. A single candle lit before a shrine meant prayer. A flickering light at the foot of a statue meant remembrance. Lovers lit them in secret rooms. Mothers lit them to soothe children into dreams. Old men lit them as they wrote letters by hand, the ink drying beside the pool of melted wax. At night, the city would shimmer with small, uneven light, not glowing from street lamps, but from windows and doorways, from wall niches and rooftop gardens, from taverns and temples, and oh, the temples. Imagine entering one as the last light of day vanishes behind you. Your feet echo on marble, the scent of incense coils through the air, statues of gods rise above you, silent, watching, and at their feet dozens of candles burn, some tall and straight, others melted nearly to the base, wax pooling in little rivers along the altar. Each flame a prayer, each glow a whisper, each flicker a voice that couldn't be spoken aloud. Candles were used during rituals to mark the sacred passage of time. In certain temples, priests would light a fresh candle at the start of each ceremony, letting it burn down as the rites were performed. When the flame went out, the prayer was complete. They even measured hours by candle. A tall candle would be marked with small notches. As the wax burned past each one, time moved forward. A soft, glowing clock that required no gears, just patience. We tend to think of Roman life in grand terms, emperors and battles, togas and aqueducts. But there was another Rome, a quieter one, a world of kitchens and bedrooms, of nighttime baths, and poetry recited by lamplight. And there, in that smaller Rome, the candle was queen. Think of a Roman girl no older than 12, lying on a straw, stuffed mattress, her mother beside her. The room smells of lavender and olive oil. A small candle burns on a wooden table, its wax dripping slowly onto a tray of bronze. The flame dances, as her mother tells a story of Venus, perhaps, or of Persephone in the underworld. The candlelight moves across the ceiling in long, slow waves, like stars in water. The girl falls asleep to the sound of her mother's voice, to the hush of wax cooling, to the warmth of that little flame, or picture a philosopher hunched at his desk late into the evening. His room is silent, save for the soft scrape of stylus on parchment. He doesn't rush. The candle beside him is nearly gone, and he knows he has until it gutters out. That's all. That's the time he's given, not a moment more. And so he writes slowly. The words matter more when the light is limited. Even emperors had their candles. Some were carved with imperial symbols. Some were perfumed with rare spices. And some, we imagine, were lit simply to calm the nerves, because even emperors needed sleep. Even emperors stared into the flame, looking for peace. Candles were also used in mourning. After a Roman death, the body would be washed, dressed, and placed in a room with candles all around. The flames were believed to guide the spirit, to protect it, to remind those left behind that light still existed, even in grief. During festivals, candles were given as gifts, a sign of warmth, of good fortune, of enduring brightness. The festival of Saturnalia, in particular, saw candles exchanged in celebration of longer days returning. The waxy light symbolized hope, a flame carried forward through the winter, and so, in a way, candles became part of Rome's emotional language. They said what words couldn't: I remember you, I forgive you, I wait for you, I love you, I'm still here. The wax melted. The wicks burned down, but the feelings lingered as scent, as smoke, as memory. And now, all these centuries later, you lie here, warm in the hush of your own room, and something in you still remembers. The flame beside you might come from a different time, a modern wick, a modern scent, but its meaning is the same. It is presence, it is peace, it is light, gently offered to the darkness. The Romans didn't have electricity. They didn't have lamps with switches, but in many ways their world was more illuminated than ours. Not with brilliance, but with care, with ritual, with meaning. Every candle was an act of intention. To light one was to create space, not just physical space, but emotional space, a pause in the chaos, a breath between moments, a chance to simply be. And now, as your own thoughts begin to soften and slow, you may find yourself imagining that small flame again. A Roman candela, steady in a terra-cotta bowl. Its light touches your fingers, your face. It warms the room not with heat, but with memory. You don't need to speak, the candle speaks for you, and as the wax melts quietly into the dish, as the wick leans gently to the side, you feel it, the ancient hush of a world lit by flame, the slow, flickering glow of a people who refused to fear the night, and the soft, enduring light of something worth remembering. The night markets of Athens, lit by flickering flame. The sun has long dipped behind the Acropolis. The marble columns that once blazed under the heat of day now sit cloaked in blue twilight, shadows slipping down their faces like long, forgotten hymns. But Athens is not asleep, not yet. A distant clatter of hooves, the soft, rhythmic drumming of sandals on stone. And ahead, on a narrow winding street tucked behind a cluster of olive trees, a flicker appears, then another, then 20 more, small flames dancing at different heights, set atop iron sconces, nestled in clay lanterns, balanced carefully atop stone walls. The air is warm, not with heat, but with breath. The collective hum of a city winding down, but not stopping. This is not the Athens of high politics or battlefield epics. No Socratic debates echo here tonight. This is a quieter Athens, slower, softer. An Athens that comes alive only after the sun sets. Welcome to the night market. The ancient Athenian night markets were nothing like the sprawling, loud mid-day agoras you've probably imagined. These were smaller, more intimate, a different kind of rhythm, less shouting, more murmuring, less coin clinking, more bartering, less bargaining over big purchases, more exchanging of things people truly needed. Oil, bread, herbs for aching backs, beeswax, wine, and of course candles. Athenian markets relied on fire after dusk. Oil lamps lined the stalls. Clay bowls with thick cotton wicks, soaked in olive oil, their flames licking the darkness with gentle golden fingers. Sometimes, if the vendor was wealthier or more superstitious, the lamp would be carved with symbols: owls for wisdom, snakes for healing, stars for guidance. A flame was never just a flame, it was protection, a quiet sentry in the night. But candles had their place too, especially in the corners, where the oil lamps couldn't quite reach. Wax from island bees, pale and smooth, was rolled and coiled into thin, winding tapers. The poor used tallow, smoky and quick to melt, but still enough to keep the shadows away. Stall keepers often placed these candles in glassless lanterns, their sides shielded by thin bone or stretched horn to keep the wind from stealing the flame. As you step deeper into this imagined market, the sounds wrap around you like a warm blanket. No hawking, no urgency. Just the soft sound of footsteps on polished stones, the gentle clink of amphorae being shifted, the whisper of linen garments brushing past, a low chuckle between vendors, the rustle of fig leaves in a woven basket, and the flame, always the flame, flickering like the heartbeat of the night itself. There's a woman kneeling beside a stall selling dried lavender and thyme. She lights a single candle each evening, not just for light, but as an offering to Hestia, goddess of the hearth. The scent of burnt herbs dances up into the air. Every now and then, she sprinkles a pinch of crushed bay leaf into the flame. A smoky whisper curls upward, disappearing into the stars. Across from her, a potter has set up a small display of tiny, palm-sized bowls. Most people walk past him during the day, too busy, too hot, too bright. But now, under the hush of candlelight, his wares shimmer with a hidden beauty. The glaze catches the warm glow, revealing patterns only visible in low light. A constellation of dolphins, a hidden owl, the barley, their profile of a god's face. He doesn't speak, just nods when someone stops, holding one bowl gently out with both hands, as if offering a secret. There's a stall further down, half covered in a faded red cloth. It sells ink and styluses. The ink is stored in small glass vials, thick, dark, almost syrupy. The vendor is old, his beard curls like ivy, and his hands shake a little when he pours. But his eyes, still gleam like polished amber. He lights 2 candles when he opens the stall, one for the gods and one for memory. He says ink is useless in the dark, unless you have fire to guide the words. Children scurry past, giggling in low voices, chasing each other between columns and carts. Their shadows flicker like ghosts on the wall, and their parents don't worry, not here. Not under the protection of so many watching flames. There are singers too. Not loud performers, no. Athens wasn't Rome. These were soft storytellers, lyre players, quiet voices weaving through the smoke like lullabies. You might find a man sitting near the steps of a closed shop, strumming slowly, his candle resting in a ceramic dish beside him. His voice is almost a whisper, a tale of a sea journey, or a woman who became a tree, or perhaps a memory too tender to speak by daylight. And people stop, not many, just 1 or 2 at a time. They lean against a wall, their faces warm from the flame and the music. They close their eyes for a while, not asleep, not yet, but close. The candlelight changes everything. Faces soften in its glow. Arguments seem smaller. Eyes look kinder. The sharp corners of the world melt a little. Even time itself slows. No one is rushing to get home. No one is watching the sky for the hour. It is enough just to be here, in this golden moment, with the flame gently fluttering and the city breathing beside you. And then there is the smell. Candles and fire do not just glow. They perfume. The air smells of beeswax and fig leaves, of charred wood and warm olives, a whisper of myrrh from a spice vendor, the faint tang of wine being poured. The markets smelled different than the temples, or the baths, or the theaters. It was earthy, live, din, human, and yet elevated by fire. Even Plato, if he wandered here, even he would have paused, not to argue or question, but just to feel, to see the way the flames move like dancers, to watch a stranger smile at another stranger, to remember that the world, for all its chaos, still holds quiet places. And as the night deepens, some stalls begin to close, flames are gently snuffed, candles are pinched out with wet fingertips, wicks coil into soft black spirals. The market doesn't end all at once. It fades, like a dream. A final girl walks past, a half-eaten date in her hand. Her lantern swings gently from her elbow, and the shadow it casts dances beside her. Somewhere behind her, a last candle still burns, forgotten but proud, its light licking at the cool air. Even long after the flames go out, their warmth lingers, in the stones beneath your feet, in the corners of cloth, still warm from the stall frames. In your chest, a memory that feels like a secret. The Athenian night markets are gone now. The stalls, the fig leaves, the beeswax candles, all swallowed by time. But the feeling, the softness of light in the dark, the hush of people coming together not to buy, but to exist, that feeling is eternal. It echoes in every modern marketplace at dusk, in the quiet cafes lit by single candles, in the street festivals that stretch long into the night. In the tiny oil lamp at your bedside, you are not far from them, not really. They lived like we dreamed, slowly, sweetly, with a candle in one hand and a story in the other. So let your mind wander there now, down the stone streets, past the whispers, into the flickering warmth. Let the flame guide you, let it soothe you, and let sleep come gently, like a market at midnight, slowly closing under the breath of candlelight. The fire temples of Persia light as sacred ritual. The wind over the Iranian plateau is dry and steady tonight. It rolls across the sand like a ghost in prayer, brushing softly against stones older than cities. Somewhere in the heart of the desert, between craggy hills and starlit silence, a temple stands. Not loud, not towering. It is simple round walls of mud brick, aged by sun and time. No banners, no crowds. But inside, something ancient flickers alive. A fire. Not just any fire, and certainly not one lit for warmth or cooking. This flame has a name. It has been fed without interruption for years, sometimes centuries. The air around it hums with reverence. It is tended not by casual hands, but by the pure, the trained, the silent keepers of the flame, Zoroastrian priests known as mobs. This is a fire temple. The Zoroastrians, one of the world's oldest surviving religious traditions, revered fire not as a god, but as a pure and sacred symbol of divinity. In their faith, fire was the physical manifestation of a Shah, truth, order, righteousness. Where fire burned steadily, so too did cosmic balance. Where it faltered, so too might harmony slip away. The fire temple was no marketplace or lively courtyard. It was a world set apart. Pilgrims entered in silence, their steps hushed on the smooth stone floor. Before reaching the inner chamber, they would often stop, pause, press their hands together in wordless reverence. No one approached the sacred fire without washing, without preparing, without humility. Because fire in this place was not just light. It was spirit, memory, presence. It represented Ahura Mazda, the great god of Zoroastrianism, wise, eternal, the light against the dark. In some temples the flames had names. Atash Bayram, the highest grade of fire, was a blaze so sacred that it could take over a year to consecrate. It was not built from a single source, but from 16 distinct fires. A fire from a baker's oven, from a potter's kiln, from a blacksmith's forge, even a flame taken from lightning, struck wood. Each flame was purified through complex rituals, prayers, and offerings, blended in a ceremony that required silence, precision, and time. Imagine standing there watching that flame dance. You can almost feel it, the heat brushing your skin, not hot but persistent. Gentle, like a breath whispering across your cheek. The flicker of light casting long, soft shadows across the curved walls. Each movement of the flame seems intentional, deliberate, a slow and sacred rhythm. The priests tended it constantly, day and night, generation after generation. They stirred the coals with tools of pure metal, never allowing breath or impurity to touch the flame. They fed it sandalwood or dry holy twigs laid with quiet care, and each time wood met fire, prayers floated upward, spoken in Avestan, the ancient liturgical language, words whose meanings even many priests could not fully translate, but whose sounds carried memory, lineage, and peace. In the outer halls, pilgrims often sat cross-legged, heads bowed. They did not speak. They let the flame speak for them. There was no sermon, no booming voice, only the low chant of prayers rising from behind veils of incense, smoke curling like lazy rivers, flowing upward toward a domed ceiling darkened from centuries of ritual. The scent was warm and resinous frankincense, myrrh, benzoin, aromas that slowed the breath and calmed the body. Sleep here was not something to fight. It was invited, like a guest. The architecture of these temples was built to honor the flame. Circular domes allowed the smoke to drift naturally upwards. Ventilation kept the air clear without disturbing the fire's rhythm. The altar room was always at the center, sealed from outside dust and wind. The entire structure seemed to breathe with the fire. Inhale when the door opened, exhale as it closed again. But even outside the temple, fire was sacred. Zoroastrian homes often kept a small hearth or oil lamp burning in a clean corner of the room. It was believed that where fire lived, blessings did too, and so mothers would whisper prayers while cooking. Fathers would light lamps at dusk with a bowed head. Children would be taught never to point their feet toward the flame or speak near it in anger. In Zoroastrian cosmology, the world was a battleground between two forces, truth and falsehood, light and darkness, Asher and Drudge. Fire was more than warmth or energy. It was a defender of order. It illuminated both literally and spiritually. Even death could not touch it. When someone passed, the dead were never cremated so as not to pollute the sacred fire. Instead, their bodies were placed in dakmas, or towers of silence, to return naturally to the earth. Fire had to remain untouched, perfect, incorruptible. You can still visit some of these fire temples today. In Yazd, Iran, a flame has been burning since at least the 5th century CE. Over 1,500 years of continuous light. Think about that. Think about all the wars, storms, droughts, dynasties, and revolutions that have come and gone. And yet, through it all, a single flame has remained. Tended, fed, whispered to. It's easy to forget, in a world of electric bulbs and blinking screens, how mystical fire once was. But in the fire temple, it never stopped being sacred. And it isn't just the flame that soothes. It's the rhythm around it. The slow, methodical tending, the soft rustle of robes, the low murmur of prayers, the occasional chime of a small bell marking the start of a new chant. Every sound seems softened by the presence of fire. Even time slows. If you were a traveler in ancient Persia, seeking a night's shelter in the wilderness, and stumbled upon a fire temple, you might find yourself invited in not to speak or share stories, but to sit. Just to sit and be. You'd be offered clean water to wash. You'd be given a woolen wrap for your shoulders. And then you'd follow the priests in silence to the chamber of flame. You wouldn't be asked your name. You wouldn't need to explain why you came. The flame would see you. That was enough. Maybe that's why the Zoroastrians never needed grand images of gods or golden idols. They had the fire, a presence that couldn't be possessed, only shared, watched, honored, felt, and maybe that's what we're missing now in the fast, flickering pace of modern life. A little stillness, a little reverence, a little time by the fire, not just to warm our hands but our thoughts, not just to light the room, but to light something inside us. So for now, you can rest your mind in that temple. You're not a tourist, you're a guest, a welcomed soul. Breathe in the ancient scent of ash and sandal wood. Hear the rustle of robes as the priest approaches the flame. Watch the ember glow slowly grow as he lays another sacred twig across the altar. There is no rush here. The flame is eternal. It waits for nothing. It hurries for no one, and yet it gives everything. You may close your eyes now if you wish. The fire will keep watch, as it always has, through centuries. Through storms, through dreams, and into sleep, candles in Roman bathhouses, luxury, leisure, and light. Somewhere in the belly of the ancient city, beneath arched ceilings of marble and mosaic, the light is low. Not dark, not dim, just warm, a golden haze, moving and trembling softly. It comes not from the sun, nor from the moon, but from the quiet gleam of dozens of small flames. Candles nestled into alcoves, tucked behind statues, set in bronze holders along the tiled corridors of the Thermae, the great Roman bathhouses. Their wax bodies melt slowly, almost rhythmically, casting flickers of light that bounce from wall to wall. The air is thick with steam and scented with crushed herbs, lavender, myrtle, perhaps even bay leaf. The gentle patter of dripping water echoes through the chambers. But above all, there is a stillness, a softness, as though time itself has been lulled by the glow of candlelight. Roman bathhouses were not merely places for cleaning the body. They were temples of leisure, of ritual, of subtle indulgence. And within these carefully constructed spaces, candlelight was more than just functional. It was atmospheric. It was mood. It was, in a way, magic. You would enter from the outside world, dusty streets, clanging carts and vendors shouting in the forum. And then silence. You would step into a world of polished marble, delicate mosaics beneath your feet, and vaulted ceilings arched like the heavens. The moment you crossed the threshold, the world quieted, the temperature shifted, and candlelight welcomed you like an old friend. In the early afternoon, the sun might still filter through a few open windows or oculi above. But as evening approached, and the flicker of flame became the only source of light, everything changed. Shadows grew long and elegant, stretching across statues of Venus and Apollo. Columns stood like silent sentinels, half in gold, half in darkness. The pools shimmered in reflection, as if lit from within. Slaves and attendants moved quietly through the bathhouse, carrying shallow bronze trays filled with clean towels, perfumes, and bowls of fruit. Candles were their guide. One would pause by a wall sconce, adjust a wick, light a fresh taper from the flame of another. Each motion was deliberate, graceful, a dance of light in slow motion. In the caldarium, the hot bath chamber, candlelight mingled with thick steam. Here, naked bodies glistened like statues, and voices dropped to whispers. The walls were close and warm to the touch, and though the heat was intense, the candles did not waver. They burned steadily, their wax slowly running in rivulets down the metal holders, collecting in patient pools at the base. In the tepidarium, the warm room, a space designed for transition and comfort, the atmosphere was gentler. Loungers reclined on marble benches, wrapped in linen, sipping spiced wine or honey water. Their faces were softly lit, the candlelight catching in their eyes like stars. The flicker made everyone look a little more divine, a little more sculpted, as though they too had stepped out of mythology. Here conversation flowed, but not too loud, the kind of talk that wrapped itself around the ears. Philosophy, poetry, dreams. Lovers leaned close. Friends shared gossip in hushed Latin. Somewhere, a musician plucked the quiet strings of a lyre, letting the notes drift through the halls like drifting smoke. All of it watched silently, faithfully, by the tiny, glowing flames. Roman engineers had designed the thermi to be marvels of architecture and plumbing, heated by hypocaust systems beneath the floors and walls. But it was the candlelight that gave these baths their soul. The architecture was grand, yes. The water was clean and hot, yes. But without light, there was no beauty, and so candles became curators of mood, offering softness, mystery, intimacy. The candles themselves were made of tallow or beeswax, sometimes even imported waxes perfumed with herbs and spices. Wealthier bathhouses could afford candles that smelled of rosemary or cinnamon, exotic luxuries brought from the far edges of the empire. Some were shaped in delicate spirals, others were simply thick columns of wax stamped with the mark of the candle maker. Some were even floated in small bowls atop the pools, drifting like tiny suns. And because Romans were deeply symbolic, even the candle's flame became a metaphor for life, for soul, for the delicate balance between presence and absence. To watch a candle flicker in the frigidarium, the cool room, was to watch your thoughts slow. You'd lie back on a cool stone bench, eyes half closed, and see the soft glow ripple across the ceiling. The air cool against your damp skin, your heartbeat slowing to match the rhythm of dripping water and the endless breath of the flame. Attendants would walk the corridors at regular intervals, relighting extinguished candles, replacing the ones that had burned too low. Always careful, always reverent, they knew the candlelight was part of the experience. Without it, the baths were mere plumbing and stone. With it, they were a sanctuary. There were also special bathhouse evenings held during certain festivals or celebrations, Saturnalia, for example, where hundreds of candles would be lit all at once, turning the halls into golden labyrinths of light and laughter. On such nights, music would echo more loudly, food would be served between dips in the pool, and poetry might be performed aloud. The candlelight danced with the crowd, creating shadows that spun on the walls like dreams. But even on ordinary days, the presence of candles reminded bathers that they were stepping into something beyond the mundane. Here, in the quiet murmur of the thermae, one could lose time. A senator might sit beside a sculptor, a merchant beside a gladiator, all equal beneath the gentle firelight, stripped of titles, adorned only in steam. And perhaps that is what made candlelight so beloved in Roman bathhouses. It leveled, it softened, it made everything, even marble and time, seem warm and alive. And now, as you imagine yourself walking those quiet corridors, feel the stone beneath your bare feet. Hear the distant echo of water lapping against the edge of a pool. See the reflection of 100 tiny flames dancing across the polished walls. You pause before a statue of Neptune, half in shadow, half in flickering gold, and you breathe deeply. You are not hurried here, you are not burdened. You are weightless in the presence of warmth and water and quiet fire. Lie back now, in your imagination, on a heated bench. Let the stone cradle your spine, let your eyes flutter closed. Let the soft golden light wash over you like a warm breeze. You are safe here. You are ancient and eternal. And the candles will keep burning as they did 2,000 years ago, as they do tonight. Egyptian tomb candles lighting the way to the afterlife. Far from the flickering life of the bustling markets, beyond the rush of Nile boats and chanting priests, there lies a stillness that time cannot disturb. Beneath the golden sands of ancient Egypt, wrapped in stone and silence, are corridors built not for the living, but for the eternal. Tombs crafted with precision, love, and reverence, homes for the soul beyond death. And within these hidden worlds, carved beneath the earth like hushed prayers, small flames once flickered, lighting the path to forever. It's hard to imagine now the warmth of candlelight in such a place. But in those first hours after burial, before the doors were sealed and silence fell forever, there was fire. Small, delicate flames, balanced atop clay holders, or pressed into niches carved in the limestone walls. These were not just for light. They were for the soul a guiding fire, a comforting companion on the great journey that was to come. You can almost hear the quiet shuffle of linen, wrapped feet, the low murmur of priestly voices reciting the Book of the Dead, as the tomb is readied. An offering table is laid out. Amulets are placed carefully upon the chest of the deceased. And then someone leans forward with a reed torch or a single taper, lighting a line of candles down the inner corridor. A hush follows. It is a sacred moment. The Egyptians believed that death was not an end, but a passage, a crossing into another world where the soul would be judged, weighed, and, if found worthy, welcomed into an eternal paradise. The journey, however, was not simple. It was filled with tests with spirits with darkness, and what better tool to guide the soul than the soft, steady light of a flame? These weren't ordinary candles in the modern sense. Ancient Egyptians often used small lamps fueled with animal fat or sesame oil. Wicks might be made from papyrus stems, twisted linen, or even reeds. Some were nestled into round ceramic saucers with a tiny lip to hold the wick. Others were cast in bronze or carved from alabaster. In royal tombs, the designs became more elaborate, shaped like lotus flowers or sacred animals. And each flame, once lit, was not just a light. It was a symbol. The flame represented the divine breath, Ka, the energy that gave the deceased strength in the afterlife. It was the eye of Ra, the sun god, watching over them in the underworld. It was warmth, protection, hope. Imagine now that you are drifting softly down one of these tomb corridors. The walls are painted with the most delicate scenes, blue lotuses floating in sacred pools, gods with jackal heads and falcon wings, golden boats sailing across the sky. The colors are rich but muted by time. The air smells of stone, old incense, and something deeper, something eternal. And there, placed every few feet, is a small lamp. Its flame dances ever so slightly. There is no breeze here. No sound, but still the flame moves like a heartbeat, like memory. In some tombs, entire chambers were reserved for candle rituals. Priests would enter before sealing the tomb, offering invocations and walking slow circles around the sarcophagus with lit tapers in hand. The movement of the flame was said to confuse malevolent spirits, or mut, that lingered in the dark. It also served to awaken the soul of the deceased, to guide them toward Osiris, god of the afterlife, and away from chaos. It is said that even the pharaohs, with all their gold and power, were not exempt from the fear of darkness. For what is power when the sun no longer rises? And so their tombs were carved deep, lit gently, filled with candles not just as tools, but as offerings, their wax mingled with sacred oils, their flames mirroring the stars above. In the Valley of the Kings, archaeologists have found traces of these ancient lights. Carbon smudges on ceilings, tiny burnt wicks trapped in old pottery. In the tomb of Tutankhamun, for example, dozens of oil lamps were discovered, some shaped like cobras, others more humble in form, each likely placed with a prayer. One can imagine the flicker of candlelight reflecting off the gold death mask, casting dancing shadows over his peaceful, sleeping face. There was a belief, too, that the flame could act as a voice, a silent voice speaking directly to the gods. During the night vigils, when family members sat outside the tomb under the stars, some would light candles and watch the flame. If it burned high and steady, it was a sign the deceased had been received with favor. If it flickered or died, it was taken as a warning. So much trust, so much hope, placed in a little light. But the Egyptians were not naive. They knew the candle would not burn forever. Wax melts, oil runs dry, wicks sputter, and so, to solve this, they did what they always did. They made magic. Symbolic candles were carved into the walls themselves. Eternal flames, painted or etched, placed above doorways and beside inscriptions. Some tombs even had false lamps, sculpted from stone and painted to look as though they were lit. A way to cheat time, to promise that light would never leave. There's a story passed down from fragments of papyri of a noblewoman who left behind a special candle, infused with blue lotus oil and myrrh. It was said that as long as the scent lingered in the tomb, her soul would wander the fields of reeds, forever free, forever luminous. Perhaps it's just a legend. Or perhaps even now, in the deepest shadows of her tomb, the air still carries the faintest trace of perfume and flame. And while we know that candles cannot last millennia, their memory does. Those who entered the tombs centuries ago, grave robbers, explorers, archaeologists, all spoke of the atmosphere. The sense that someone had only just been there, the soot marks, the candle holders, the scent. It was as though time had paused, held in place by firelight. In the quiet of the desert night, outside these tombs, the stars themselves seemed to flicker in sympathy. The Egyptians believed that the sky was a vast canopy, held up by the goddess Nut, whose body arched over the world. Every star was a soul, every flicker of light a message from beyond, and so, as candles burned below, stars burned above. A reflection, a rhythm, a reassurance. And now here you are in your bed, wrapped in soft blankets, eyes growing heavy. But in your mind's eye, you are there in that sacred chamber. The stone is cool beneath your hand. The candle near you wavers gently. You hear nothing but your own breaths and the faint echo of eternity. You reach out not to touch, but to feel the warmth of the past, the quiet blessing of those who lit flames not for themselves, but for the souls they loved. They are with you now, their light reaches across centuries, and as the last candle flickers as the wax melts down to its end, a strange thing happens. The room does not darken. Instead, it glows softly, gently, as if the flame had moved inside you. Sleep now, gentle traveler. The tomb is safe. The gods are kind. and the candle has shown you the way. Byzantine candle ceremonies, rituals of smoke and silence. The night is velvet, deep and unmoving, stretched across the heavens like a silent curtain. In the distant shadows of Constantinople, domes rise into the dusk like bronze moons, and the streets whisper with the faint scuff of sandals on worn stone. The great city sleeps uneasily, its empire vast, its secrets ancient. But within the heart of it, hidden beyond golden doors and marble columns, there is a place where time slows, where words fall silent, and where the only language that remains is candlelight. Step quietly now, past the outer walls of Hagia Sophia, where mosaics glint faintly in the torchlight, and incense curls like memory in the cold air. The city may be restless, but within these stone sanctuaries, the Byzantine world becomes a theatre of stillness. Here, under high ceilings painted with saints and stars, candles glow like halos, and every flame holds meaning. The Byzantines did not light candles for mere illumination. They lit them for the soul, for ritual. For power, each ceremony, whether imperial or humble, began not with a trumpet, not with a word, but with the soft hiss of flame meeting wick. It was the moment where heaven touched earth, a flickering bridge between the mortal and the divine. Imagine now, you are within the narthex, the entrance chamber of a great cathedral. You've just stepped out of the cold, the wind biting at your cloak, and as the heavy doors shut behind you, you're embraced by warmth and fragrance. Myrrh, beeswax, ancient stone, and ahead of you, a path of tiny flames leads inward toward mystery. There is no rush. In the Byzantine world, sacred time unfolds slowly, deliberately. A deacon moves past you, robed in embroidered silk, carrying a tall taper known as a tricerion, a three-branched candle used to invoke the Holy Trinity. He doesn't speak, he doesn't need to. The glow of the flame, the trail of smoke it leaves behind, the sound of his footfall on marble. This is the sermon. This is the beginning. The people who gathered for these ceremonies did so not to be dazzled, but to be transformed. Candlelight was a portal quiet, solemn, hypnotic. Once lit, the candles were never just decoration. Each was a prayer, a vow, a sentinel watching between worlds. In Byzantine rites, candles were arranged with astonishing precision. For certain feast days, hundreds of tiny beeswax lights were lined in rows before icons gold, leafed portraits of saints and martyrs. Each candle lit with a murmured blessing, each flame a plea for protection, for forgiveness, or for healing. Worshippers would approach slowly, some weeping, some silent, and press their lips to the base of the image before lighting a candle of their own. The cathedral would become a sea of light, soft, golden, trembling. You could almost believe the flames were breathing. One of the most haunting candle rituals took place during Holy Week, the 7 days leading to Easter. On Holy Thursday, the lights of the cathedral were dimmed entirely. It would begin in near total darkness, save for a single flame lit by the Archbishop himself, drawn from a sanctified lamp that had been burning without interruption for years. This was no ordinary candle. It was the eternal flame, said to be a direct inheritance of divine presence, like the burning bush of Moses, like the fire that descended at Pentecost. From this one flame, the entire church would be lit. One by one, deacons stepped forward, their tapers catching the sacred light. Then the priests, then the acolytes, then the congregation, and in mere minutes, darkness was pushed back, not by force, but by devotion. 1,000 small flames bloomed like stars. You can imagine the sound, the faint crackle of wicks, the rustle of robes, the muffled sniffles of pilgrims overwhelmed by beauty. There were no electric bulbs here, no stage lights, just fire real and ancient, fire that lived. Smoke always played its part in these ceremonies. Candles were rarely alone. They were accompanied by censers, swinging brass lanterns filled with burning incense. As the flames flickered, the smoke would rise in slow, spiraling ribbons, blurring the outlines of the icons, softening the faces of the saints until they seemed to blink or breathe. It was said that in such moments heaven came nearer. The boundary between the physical and spiritual world dissolved just slightly, just enough. In the palace chapels of the emperors, candle rituals took on a grandeur that defied belief. Justinian, the great builder of Hagia Sophia, once commissioned a procession of 300 candle-bearers to walk before him at night, their flames forming a moving river of light through the capital. Each candle was handmade, scented with cinnamon or frankincense, and many were shaped into miniature towers or crosses. These were not merely royal gestures, they were declarations. Byzantium did not rule by sword alone. It ruled by mystery, by the divine fire. Even outside the great cathedrals, candlelight held sacred meaning. In monasteries high on cliffs or buried deep in valleys, monks would begin their days long before sunrise with a ritual called the midnight office. One candle would be lit in a pitch-black chapel. The brothers, wrapped in their hooded robes, would chant in slow harmony, their faces lit only by the trembling flame at the altar. It was believed that during these early hours the veil between the living and the departed was thinnest. Candles lit during this time were meant not only for the monks, but for the souls wandering in the dark. Some monks crafted their own candles as acts of meditation. Beeswax would be melted and poured by hand, then infused with sacred oils rose, spikenard, cedar. The wicks were twisted from old linen robes, worn thin by years of prayer. The candles were never just tools. They were offerings as intimate as breath. There are stories whispered in the folds of Byzantium's history, tales of miraculous candles that refused to burn out, even in storms, of saints whose tombs glowed with unseen light, of pilgrims who claimed to see visions of the Virgin Mary dancing in candle smoke. Who's to say what's true? The Byzantines never demanded you believe. They simply asked you to sit, to be still, and to look. And so here you are now, far from the marble cathedrals, far from the sea winds of Constantinople. You're lying still, warm under your covers, and yet your mind drifts toward that ancient chamber where 100 candles burn in perfect silence. You see the stone walls glimmer, the shadows curl and stretch, and the scent of beeswax and old incense drifts into your imagination. There is no rush here, no urgency. The world slows, the flames dance. One of them might be yours, lit not with your hand, but with your dream. It flickers gently, casting a soft glow on your resting face. And perhaps in some quiet corner of the cosmos, the saints of Byzantium see that light and smile. Sleep now, the candles will keep watch, they always have. Votive flames and forgotten wishes, candles in pagan temples. The flicker of flame is not just light. In the ancient world, it was a whisper to the gods. Long before cathedrals and chapels, before sacred hymns echoed through marble sanctuaries, before the faint scent of beeswax perfumed Christian altars, there were temples hidden among trees, carved into mountainsides, or crumbling under the Mediterranean sun, and there, in hushed corners or upon worn stone altars, burned the votive flame. A candle, small and flickering, yet heavy with meaning, lit not for utility, but for prayer, for gratitude, or sometimes for hope. You're walking now not in the present, but across a dreamlike vision of time, through the soft mist of forgotten centuries. Your footsteps echo across a stone courtyard, the sky above swirling with smoke from burning oils. You enter a sanctuary, a pagan temple older than memory itself. And in the center of the chamber a simple flame trembles, its light no brighter than a star. And yet it draws you in like gravity. These were votive candles. The ancients didn't call them that, not in those words. But the idea was eternal light given in exchange for favor. A silent offering, a signal to the divine. In Greece, votive candles were often placed before statues of the gods. A flicker for Athena for wisdom, a glow for Apollo for healing, a shimmering flame for Aphrodite for love. Pilgrims would travel days, even weeks, through rocky paths and wild forests just to kneel in the darkness of a temple and leave behind their flame, a flame that carried their wish. The candles were made from tallow or beeswax, sometimes infused with fragrant oils, but they were not plain. No, they were shaped with care, twisted into small spirals, molded into animal forms, painted with symbols. They were objects of beauty, destined to melt slowly at the feet of gods. Imagine now the Temple of Delph, high in the Parnassian mountains, where mist curls like a serpent through the stones. There, beneath the gaze of the oracle, countless flames would burn, left behind by seekers who hoped for prophecy. The air inside the temple was thick with incense and dreams. Each candle, flickering beneath the stone visage of Apollo, shimmered like a question, a plea for truth, a longing for answers. These votive flames burned for everyone, for kings who sought omens before war, for farmers praying for rain, for the childless mother, the broken-hearted sailor, the poet desperate for a whisper of inspiration. In Rome, the votive tradition expanded like the empire itself. Shrines were everywhere, in great temples, yes, but also in homes, marketplaces, crossroads, even at the roots of ancient trees. Each shrine had its own guardian spirit, its own sacred rhythm, and always there were candles. Romans lit votive lights before the lares and penates, the household gods who protected the home. A father might rise before dawn, kneel at the hearth, and light a single flame to thank the spirits for safety. The flame would flicker through the morning, a quiet companion to daily life. During Saturnalia, the great festival of reversal and chaos, candles were given as gifts. They symbolized light returning after the dark of winter, a reminder that even in chaos, warmth could be found. The Romans called them cerae, and they were crafted with care, gilded sometimes, wrapped in ribbons. But more often they were simple, honest flames, meant to chase away the long night. And beyond Greece and Rome, the votive flame burned still. In Egypt, votive offerings of flame and oil were placed before statues of Isis, Osiris, and Horus. Their temples pulsed with soft golden light as priests moved silently between the altars. Candles, made from animal fat and reeds, were lit at dusk and watched carefully through the night. Egyptians believed that flame was a manifestation of Ka, the spirit, the life force. To light a candle was to call the gods into the room. Some flames were meant never to die. Eternal fires were kept alive by generations of temple attendants. If a flame went out, it was not just a mistake. It was a tragedy, a break in the thread between worlds. You can almost hear the silence in those temples now, the way a single flame could make shadows dance along the faces of forgotten gods, the way a woman's trembling hands might light a candle, close her eyes, and whisper her heart's secret to a god carved from limestone and time. In Celtic lands, votive candles burned near sacred springs and groves. These were the places where the veil between worlds was thin, where druids believed the spirits of earth and sky could be reached. Travelers would leave behind offerings, coins, flowers, or tiny flickering candles balanced on flat stones. Some were prayers for safe passage, others messages to the dead. Not all votive candles were for asking. Many were for thanking. Gratitude, too, had its ritual. If a wish was granted, if the rain came, or the child recovered, or the lover returned, a second candle would be lit. A flame of thanks set beside the first, two flames dancing together, one for the asking, one for the answer. Of course, not every candle's wish came true. Many were forgotten, left to melt beside cracked idols, or buried beneath shifting sands. But even in their fading there was beauty, because the ancients understood something modern hearts often forget, that hope itself is sacred, that to ask to believe, to kneel in the dark and leave behind a flame, is its own kind of magic. Now imagine yourself in one of those temples, long abandoned, vines curling up through marble columns, birds nesting in places where priests once chanted. The altar is broken, the statues are worn, and yet there, tucked into a corner, untouched by time, is a small patch of wax. The ghost of a candle, the memory of someone's wish, you wonder. What did they ask for? A healing, a child. Forgiveness, peace, you will never know. But in this moment, as you lie still beneath the hush of sleep, you carry their wish forward. You remember their flame, and in remembering, you become part of the chain. The votive tradition never truly died. In chapels across the world, in roadside shrines, in small sanctuaries carved into hillsides, candles still burn. They flicker in hospital rooms, in the corners of bedrooms, on windowsills during long winter nights. They still carry wishes. And so tonight, as you breathe softly and let your thoughts drift into the shadowy corners of the ancient past, perhaps you'll imagine a candle of your own. Perhaps you'll see it clearly, its small flame dancing in the dark, its wax warm and fragrant, its purpose simple and true. You do not need a temple. You do not need to speak. You need only a quiet heart. The wish is already there. Let it flicker, let it glow, and let yourself rest under the watch of forgotten gods and silent flames. Candle magic in Babylon, light, spellwork, and stars. You are not here, not in this room, not in this time. You are somewhere older. Imagine your footsteps falling gently on ancient stone. The sky above you is a velvet dome, indigo and immense, embroidered with stars. Not the stars we see through polluted cities, but stars so bright they flicker like they're whispering secrets. Secrets to the earth below, secrets to Babylon. It is night in the city of hanging gardens, of mighty ziggurats and golden altars. The Euphrates glides silently nearby, its surface catching reflections of torchlight and moon glow. All around you, walls rise from the earth like living things, etched with cuneiform, with prayers, with diagrams of constellations. And somewhere, within one of these sacred towers, a flame is waiting, a candle, not just a light, but a ritual, a voice, a charm. Here in Babylon, flame and magic are the same. The Babylonians, like their Sumerian and Akkadian ancestors, lived beneath a sky they believed was a scroll written upon by gods and read by priests. Everything, from birth to war to illness to harvest, could be foretold by the stars or soothed by flame. Their rituals weren't loud. They didn't require chaos. They required silence, preparation, candlelight. In the corners of sacred chambers where astronomers and magi met to interpret omens, candles burned with specific intention. Their placement was no accident. Each flame corresponded to a celestial body: Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Mercury, and of course, the moon. A candle lit for Venus was tinged with blue, crafted with aromatic herbs, and used to soften hearts, bless marriages, and inspire longing. One for Mars might be deep red, sharp with resin, burning hot and fast, used to shield warriors or invoke righteous fury. These weren't the wax candles you may know. In Babylon, they worked with oils and reeds, sometimes animal fat, sometimes hardened tree resins. What mattered wasn't the form, but the flame, the flicker, the dance of smoke. A magician would begin by tracing a circle, on the ground or in the air. He would chant in low tones, not calling gods, but inviting the essence of cosmic balance. Then he'd light the candle with a flint and watch, closely, carefully. If the flame leaned westward, it meant obstacles. If it split in two, there might be betrayal. If it burned low but steady, that was a sign of truth being revealed slowly, like dawn after storm. People came with their wishes, their worries, their secrets. A woman hoping for fertility might bring a lock of hair, a pinch of grain, a vial of water from the river, and a candle soaked in myrrh. The priest would whisper to the flame. He'd place the items near it. He'd let the smoke rise, rising to the open sky where Inanna and Ishtar and the high gods lived. It was said that wishes tied to flame reached the heavens faster. There were other kinds of candle magic, too. Some weren't so kind. In the deeper alleys of Babylon, away from the ziggurats and temples, lived women called Shiptu sorceresses. They practiced protective magic, healing, and when needed revenge. Their candles weren't ceremonial. They were personal, a thin twist of wax, shaped like a human, lit in silence, left to melt slowly in front of a closed door. Each drop of wax, a whisper of pain sent toward an enemy. But even then, the candle was more messenger than weapon. The belief was not in destruction, but in balance. If you'd wronged someone, the flame would find you. If you'd lied, the candle would expose you. There was power in fire, yes, but more than that, there was memory. Candles were also used to protect the dying. As life flickered in a failing body, the Babylonians would light a candle near the head of the sick, not to cure, though they hoped, but to comfort, to light the soul's path, to guide it up toward the stars. For just as the stars were souls placed in the sky, so too would this one ascend, carried on smoke, on warmth, on flame. And when a child was born, a candle again, this time with milk, herbs, and chants, a circle drawn around the crib, a flame placed at the four corners of the room, one for life, one for strength, one for protection, one for destiny. The flame would burn until sunrise. If it didn't last, the omens were read again. If it flickered too wildly, more charms were made. If it burned low and steady, the child was thought to be blessed. Imagine that, your entire life's path, whispered in the language of candlelight, before you'd taken your first steps. But perhaps most beautiful of all was the candle magic used at the river. At the banks of the Euphrates, especially during the spring festivals, people would light small floating candles, handmade dishes of clay, each carrying oil and wick. They'd whisper wishes, dreams, sometimes regrets. Then they'd set them upon the water and watch. If the candle floated far and didn't go out, the wish would be granted. If it spun in circles or sank well, the gods were not yet ready. There's something timeless about that image, isn't there? The idea of thousands of tiny flames floating like stars on the surface of the river. Each one a secret, each one a prayer, each one a part of the night. Even kings believed in this magic. It's said that Nebuchadnezzar, ruler of the great city, once ordered 1,000 candles to be lit before his marriage, each one representing a blessing, a barrier against misfortune, a light to guide his union into divine favor. And when his son was born, the flame rituals continued for 7 nights straight. No fire could be allowed to go out. Servants rotated in shifts to guard them, because an extinguished flame meant vulnerability. The gods might look away. And so they never let the flame sleep. Neither will we, not yet, because in this moment you are not just hearing a story. You're remembering a time when flame was language, when light was power, when a candle wasn't just an object but a door. And so we wonder, softly, without needing answers, what would you ask the Babylonian flame? If you were kneeling beside the river tonight, if the priest handed you a small dish of oil and said, "This flame will carry your wish to the stars," what would you say? Would you ask for peace, for sleep, for healing? Would you stay silent and let the smoke say it for you? The Babylonian candle doesn't need words. It needs intention. Even now, across time and memory, its light flickers still. In modern times, we speak of rituals and affirmations and intention, setting, but the Babylonians knew this all along. The candle is a mirror. It reflects the quiet truth you've carried within you, and as it burns, that truth becomes sacred. So tonight, in the hush between one breath and the next, imagine your own Babylonian flame. See the shape of it, its warm glow in a clay dish, its scent of spiced oil, its smoke rising in a lazy spiral toward a dark velvet sky. Let it carry what you no longer need. Let it hold what you wish for gently. Let it flicker beside your dreams. And when your thoughts finally grow quiet, when your body becomes still and sleep wraps around you like ancient silk, know this, you are not alone in the dark. The flame is still burning, and the stars are listening. Byzantine vigil lights, flame as faith, ritual, and watchfulness. You are no longer where you were. The modern world, with its ticking clocks and glowing screens, has been left behind. Let it go. Let it dissolve like morning mist, because now you're stepping through a veil, and on the other side of that veil the air is older, thicker with incense, sweeter with oil, quieter with only the faint hum of prayer echoing through long stone corridors. You are standing in Constantinople, the city of cities, the jewel of empires, Byzantium, and it is night. The sun has long dipped beneath the Bosporus horizon, leaving the sea dark and glistening. But within the sacred spaces of the city, light remains. A soft, unwavering glow that does not flicker in haste. These are not torches, not wild hearths or blazing braziers. These are vigil lights small, devout flames kept alive with oil and devotion. They are everywhere, in the apse of a church, swinging gently from brass chains, before icons painted with gold and sorrow, at the bedside of a sick child, or in the cupped hands of a grieving widow. In Byzantium, the flame was never just a light. It was presence, it was witness, it was watchfulness. The faithful called them Kappa, Alphen, U Delta, Etal, Amda, Epsilon, Sigma, candiles, glass lamps suspended in silence. Some were clear, others the deep blue of midnight, the ruby red of old wine, the soft green of olive leaves. Each held fragrant olive oil and a thin floating wick, trimmed and lit with care. These lights were tended constantly, never allowed to die out. For to let a vigil lamp extinguish was not only a physical lapse but a spiritual one. You see, these flames were considered living prayers. A soul offering itself in stillness to the divine. Imagine this now. You step into one of Byzantium's great churches, Hagia Sophia, perhaps. It is vast and echoing. Stone arches rise like waves. The scent of frankincense curls through the air. And high above you, in great bronze chandeliers, hundreds, perhaps thousands of vigil lights sway in breathless reverence. Each one a tongue of flame, each one a wordless chant. The Byzantines believed the flame had eyes, that it saw what you could not, that it stood watch while you slept, while you wept, while you wandered. Even emperors bowed before it. Even generals crossed themselves before its glow. In times of plague or siege, vigil lights multiplied. Women lit them in clusters, 3 for the Trinity, 7 for the archangels, 12 for the apostles. Children were taught how to prepare them with reverence. Clean the glass, pour the oil with both hands, place the wick gently, light it with whispered prayer. The ritual was never rushed, because rushing a flame was like hurrying a sunrise. You couldn't force it. You had to wait, to breathe, to be with it. There are stories, quiet ones, of monks who sat by a single vigil lamp all night long. No speaking, no movement, just breathing in time with the flickering glow, waiting for nothing, simply watching. Because watchfulness nepsis, they called it, was a sacred practice. To watch a flame was to watch the soul. And the flame always reflected back. If your heart was anxious, the flame trembled. If your thoughts were tangled, the smoke curled wildly. If your spirit was calm, the flame burned low and steady, without wavering. Some vigil lights were placed before specific icons, saints who listened, who held space. Saint Basil for protection, Saint Theodora for justice, the Virgin Theotokos for mercy. You would light a lamp, leave an offering, bread, a tear, a vow, and walk away knowing your flame would keep watch in your absence. Others lit lamps at crossroads, at shrines, in secret. There's a tale whispered by pilgrims of a woman who lit a vigil lamp every night for her son, a soldier lost to battle. Though he never returned, she never let it die. 40 years passed, and when she finally passed away herself, the story says her flame burned 3 days longer, untouched, until a traveling monk found it and relit it in her name. He said he felt warmth not from the flame, but from her faith, and perhaps it's true, for faith in Byzantium was never loud. It didn't shout, it glowed. Even the great Holy Week services, those most sombre and sacred, were candle-lit. No electric buzz, no bright chandelier, just the hush of hundreds of oil flames. illuminating sorrow and resurrection alike. As the choir sang in Byzantine chant, the flames swayed gently, responding to every breath of music. But vigil lights weren't only for the church. They lived in homes too. Each household had a place for them, on a mantel or shelf, or in a carved niche in the wall. It was where the family gathered to pray, to mourn, to remember. Children were taught to light them with clean hands and clean hearts. If the flame jumped wildly when lit, it was said that someone in the family was struggling. If the flame refused to catch, perhaps a secret had been kept too long. And if the flame leaned toward the door, a visitor was on the way. There was poetry in everything, a language in the light, and no one needed to speak it aloud. It was felt, not heard, and oh, how they believed in the flame's ability to protect. During storms, vigil lamps were lit with psalms. During childbirth, lit with salt placed nearby. During war, the emperor himself walked barefoot through the palace chapel, lighting vigil lights before icons of Christ Pantocrator, asking for wisdom, for victory, for mercy. And even when the city fell, when the Ottomans breached the mighty walls and Byzantium gasped its last, the flame did not go out. They say some lamps remained lit in underground chapels, hidden by faithful hands, passed from generation to generation in quiet resistance. Even today, in the Greek Orthodox churches of Istanbul, vigil lights still burn, not as decoration, but as remembrance, as witness, as a promise that no matter what kingdoms fall, what walls crumble, what names are forgotten, light remains. And in this moment, far from empires and ancient cities, you too can carry that flame, not with oil or glass, but with breath, with stillness, with the gentle decision to rest. Imagine now a vigil lamp beside your bed. It's small, quiet, unwavering. It watches you not with judgment, but with understanding. It knows you've been tired. It knows the weight you've carried. And it doesn't ask for anything except that you allow it to burn, to keep watch while you rest. So close your eyes if you haven't already. Let the hush of history wrap around you like silk. Let your thoughts slow. Let the flame take them from you one by one. You are in Byzantium now, safe within ancient stone, watched by the glow of countless lights. And just outside the window, the stars keep vigil too. Candlelight in ancient India, rituals of illumination and sacred timing. Let yourself slow down now. Let the day drift away, not in a rush, but like a feather floating on warm air. Let the noise dim. Let your shoulders soften. You are safe here, and you are no longer in the world of glowing screens and restless clocks. You're stepping gently into another time, another place, ancient India, a place where the scent of sandalwood drifts like memory, where jasmine vines curl along quiet courtyards, and where flame isn't just flame, it's sacred time. It's divine rhythm, it's ritual, it's offering, it's prayer in motion. Here, candlelight was not just a convenience. It wasn't merely for sight. Incident it was for CONNECTION, with the CRITIQUE of gods, the cosmos, the ancestors, the deepest parts of the self. The flame had meaning, and everything around it was designed to honor that. Imagine now the earliest hours before sunrise. The sky is still deep indigo. The village is quiet. Only the birds have begun their whispering songs. And in one small stone house a woman wakes. She moves without speaking. She steps into the courtyard barefoot, the ground still cool beneath her feet. She carries a small brass lamp, an oil diya. She cleans it first, with reverent fingers, wipes away any soot, fills it with ghee, clarified butter, or sesame oil. She places a cotton wick carefully, coiled like a whisper. Then she lights it, and just like that the flame is born. It flickers, pauses, then settles. It is soft and golden, like morning itself, but she does not walk away. She remains with it. She watches it, breathes with it. She begins her prayer not loudly, not urgently, just a chant under her breath, a name of a god, a hymn from memory. The words are old as the hills. They move with the rhythm of her breath, the rise and fall of the flame. This is not about spectacle. It is not meant for others to see. This is a private ritual, an act of timing, of alignment, for in ancient India everything had its time. Sacred timing, called muhurta, was observed in everything: when to rise, when to bathe, when to light the lamp, when to begin a journey, when to offer prayers. And the lamp, the flame, always marked those moments. Lighting a flame was not an act of routine. It was the act of opening a space, a door between worlds. The flame was believed to hold Agni, the fire god. Agni was not just a deity of destruction or heat. Agni was the divine messenger, carrying prayers from earth to heaven. He was invoked at weddings, births, even at death. He was honored with every flame. So the woman in our story, though alone in her courtyard, is not truly alone. The flame connects her to Agni, and through Agni to the divine. This little ritual was repeated every day, not just in homes, but in temples, roadside shrines, and open fields. And each one was a quiet act of devotion. Picture now the great temples, majestic structures carved from mountains, their walls echoing with soft chants, their sanctums hidden in shadow. And yet, at the heart of every temple, even in darkness, there is always light. A lamp kept burning, an Akhan Jyoti, an unbroken flame. Some temples still hold flames that have burned for centuries, tended by priests in silence, passed down through generations. These flames are not symbols, they are sacred realities. They represent the eternal, the unchanging truth beneath the changing world. Weddings were centered around fire too. The sacred fire, Havan, was lit in a square pit. The couple circled it 7 times, making vows with every turn. The flame was not a witness, it was a participant. The fire sealed the union. Without it, the marriage was not complete. Even festivals were lit by flame. Take Diwali, the festival of lights, a celebration older than empires, where thousands of lamps are lit across rooftops, courtyards, and riverbanks. Each lamp a welcome, a prayer, a promise. But in ancient times, Diwali wasn't only about celebration. It was about alignment. The timing of Diwali was based on the lunar calendar, a specific moment of darkness, the new moon night. And what did people do on that darkest night? They lit light, not once, but thousands of times. The idea was clear. Even in the darkest moment, light could be created. Even when the moon turned its face, human hands could offer a soft, glowing reply. Let's go back now to the homes. The everyday spaces. In many households, children were taught from a young age how to light the lamp at twilight. Not before, not after. Exactly at dusk when day turns to night, and the world balances on the breath between. This moment was sacred, the sandhya, the joining time. And what do you do in a joining time? You honor it. You pause, you light. Flickering flames were placed at doorways, at the base of sacred trees, at the edge of wells. Even on the banks of rivers, where women floated small lamps on leaf boats, letting them drift with the current. Some did this in mourning, some in hope, but all with intention. The lamps were messages, silent, floating prayers. A mother might whisper her child's name into the flame. A farmer might ask for rain. A daughter might remember her lost father. The river took them all, carrying the flames into the unseen. And then there was meditation. The yogis and sages of ancient India often meditated by candlelight, but not just with a candle on it. They practiced trataka, steady gazing. Sitting completely still, they fixed their eyes on a single flame. They did not blink, did not look away. They watched the flame until their vision blurred, until their thoughts faded, until the boundary between seer and seen dissolved. In that soft flicker, they found stillness. They found the breath of the cosmos. They found themselves. The flame became a mirror, showing what was hidden, because the flame has no ego. It burns for all. It shows you what you bring. If you bring haste, it dances wildly. If you bring fear, it shrinks. If you bring stillness, it glows evenly, like a golden eye that never sleeps. And so here in your quiet space, centuries later, far from the Ganges or the temples of the south, you can still light that flame. Not with oil, but with presence. You can imagine it now, a small diya before you, made of clay, painted in red and gold. The wick is short, the oil glistens, you lean in and light it. It flickers, then steadies, and now you're in rhythm. Breathe with it, slowly, evenly, as if each breath you take helps the flame stay alive, because maybe it does. Let this quiet moment be your ritual. Let this time, this hour, this night be your sandhya. Let your mind grow quiet. Let your heart slow. Let your soul, like the flame, glow gently. There is no rush. There is only rest. Only sacred timing. Only a rhythm as old as time itself. And long after the flame fades, the warmth remains. It lives in your breath, in your silence, in your sleep. So sleep now, dreamer. The flame watches over you. It always has. It always will. Flames of the samurai. The candle-lit philosophy of Bushido. Breathe slowly now. Let the world around you fall away, piece by piece. Let the buzzing and flashing of today's world soften into the hush of stillness. And allow yourself to enter a different time, a slower one, a quieter one. Let us go to Japan. The air is cool. A mist rolls over a quiet mountain. You are far from any city, tucked in a wooden house built for peace, not display. Shoji screens filter the light. Tatami mats cushion your feet. Outside, a cherry tree sighs in the wind. Its petals drift like snowflakes toward the earth. Inside, the only light comes from a candle, just one, set within a simple iron holder, no adornment, no scent. It burns with soft dignity. Its flame doesn't flicker wildly. It sways in harmony with the silence. This is not just decoration. This is not a tool. This is a philosophy. For the samurai, the ancient warrior class of Japan, the flame was not merely illumination. It was reflection, it was metaphor, it was discipline, and above all it was the breath of Bushido, the way of the warrior. Picture now a samurai seated alone, kneeling with legs folded beneath him. He is not polishing his sword, not sparring. He is sitting in stillness before a candle, watching, breathing, learning, because for the true warrior, stillness was strength. And the candle was a teacher. In the flickering light, the samurai saw the impermanence of all things. One gust of wind, and the flame would vanish. One careless move, and darkness would fall. So too with life. So too with honor. This thought was not frightening. It was freeing. For the samurai, death was not something to be feared. It was something to be accepted, even welcomed if it came with honor. Just as a candle accepts that it must burn to fulfill its purpose. Just as it melts, drop by drop, not in sorrow but in service. This is the soul of Bushido, not violence. Not glory, but discipline, service, sacrifice, and humility. Imagine now a training hall at night. No torches blaze. Only soft candlelight glows from paper lanterns hung along the walls. Swords glint faintly. Wooden floors creak beneath bare feet. Young warriors move through forms, kata, not with aggression, but with precision. Each breath is timed, each movement calculated. And when the lesson ends, they bow, first to their teacher, then to the flame. It is not superstition, it is respect. For the candle witnessed their effort, and the flame, like the sword, does not lie. It shows what is, not what one pretends to be. You see, the candle was more than a symbol. It was a reminder that time is short, that life is fragile, that the smallest gesture can carry the deepest meaning. In many samurai households, a candle was lit before every act of writing, especially when composing a death poem or jaisai. This wasn't morbid. It was tradition, a final gift of clarity, a final act of beauty. The candle gave company to those preparing to die. Its light, small but steady, stood against fear. and in its warmth many found peace. It's easy to think of the samurai only as warriors, clad in armor and bound to duty. But they were also poets, calligraphers, gardeners. They understood that a sword without wisdom was a danger, not a virtue. And so they studied by candlelight, scrolls unfurled on low wooden tables, inkstones were readied, brushes dipped. And while the rest of the world slept, the samurai practiced not war but reflection. Zen Buddhism deeply shaped their lives, and the flame was a part of that too. In the teachings of Zen, the candle symbolized awareness, a mind focused like a flame, unshaken, untroubled. One Zen master once said, "Be like the candle, steady, silent, and self-consuming in purpose." In the long hours before dawn, many sat in meditation, watching the candle as one might listen to a river. The wax fell silently, the flame breathed but made no sound, and in that quiet presence clarity was born. There's a story, told and retold, about a lone samurai monk who lived deep in the mountains. He had left the courts, left battle, left everything behind. He kept only one robe, one bowl, and one candle. Each night before sleep he lit that candle, not to read, not to write, but to remember who he was, to remember that everything passes, that even grief like wax melts. It's said he once told a traveler, "The candle does not mourn the darkness. It simply offers its light and accepts the rest." Such quiet wisdom defined the later samurai. They no longer fought as their ancestors had. The age of great battles had passed. But the philosophy of fire remained. In tea houses, candles flickered beside bowls of matcha. In shrines, votive candles lined the stone paths, honoring ancestors, guiding the way. And in homes, candles were lit not for need, but for stillness. A family might gather in the evening, not around a screen, but around a single flame, speaking in hushed voices, or not speaking at all, letting the light speak for them, letting it settle the soul. And you too, here and now, can share in that calm. You don't need a katana, you don't need silk robes. You don't need a temple in Kyoto or a dojo on a misty hillside. You only need stillness and breath and imagination. Picture it, a flame before you, soft, golden, flickering gently. It leans with the rhythm of your breath. When you inhale, it lifts. When you exhale, it rests. This is your moment now. Your personal Mizu no Kokoro, the mind like water. A mind clear enough to reflect the flame without distortion. Let your thoughts drift like smoke. No need to follow them, no need to catch them. Just let them rise, curl, and vanish. In this space there is no battle, no fear, no pride, only warmth, only breath, only the silent company of fire. And remember, the candle does not shine to be praised. It does not compare its flame to another. It burns because it was made to burn. That is enough. You too are enough. You too have your own quiet light. You do not need to prove it, only to let it glow. Let it warm your heart. Let it soothe your thoughts. Let it guide you into sleep. Let the room around you fade. Let the sound of the world soften. Let this ancient wisdom, the gentle bushido of the candle, keep watch over you as you rest. The samurai would say, "Fall 7 times, stand up 8. But tonight there is no need to stand. Tonight you may fall into deep sleep, and let the candle of your mind burn on, soft, steady, at peace, candles in cathedrals, illuminating the soul in medieval Europe. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Let your shoulders soften. Let the day fall away like a robe at the end of a long journey. Inhale gently and exhale even slower. Now drift backward, not just in time but into something deeper. A place where stone speaks, silence sings, and shadows are touched by flame. We are entering a cathedral, not as a tourist, not as a historian, but as a quiet soul in need of stillness. The great stone doors creak softly as they open. You step into coolness. A hush falls over you, not imposed, but invited. The kind of silence that isn't empty but full. And then you see them, candles, hundreds, thousands, flickering, like stars scattered across the floor of the earth. Some are nestled in iron sconces along the walls, others in golden holders before saints' statues. Some tiny, humble offerings from peasants with weathered hands. Others, towering wax columns lit by bishops in grand ceremonies. But all of them, burn with the same quiet purpose, to bring light where there is none. Their flames dance, soft and golden, casting shadows that breathe on the ancient stone. Light bounces from stained glass windows, ruby reds, sapphire blues, emerald greens, not with brilliance, but with gentleness, like a lullaby sung in color. These candles were not decorations, they were devotion. In the medieval world, light was holy, and the candle, a bridge between this world and the next. In an age when daylight ended early and darkness swallowed the countryside whole, the cathedral stood as a lantern in the mist, not because of torches or great fires, but because of candles, one flame, then another, and another, until the sacred space pulsed with living light. Imagine now a monk in the 13th century. His robes are rough, his feet calloused. He walks slowly down the nave of the cathedral at dusk, holding a single candle in cupped hands, not to see but to begin. To begin the vespers, the evening prayer. He walks past pews carved by men long gone, past statues worn smooth by the kisses of pilgrims. And as he moves, more monks join, each bearing a flame. The altar glows brighter, the shadows retreat, and in the rising warmth, voices lift in chant. But beneath that music, there is always the flame, always the candle, steady and soft. It doesn't flicker wildly. It listens. It holds the space. You might think of these medieval cathedrals as cold places, grand and imposing, but by candlelight they became intimate. Even the tallest vaults and arches leaned down to whisper, and the people, from kings to beggars, were bathed in the same gentle glow. Each candle held meaning. Some were lit to honor saints, others to remember the dead. A mother might light one for her sick child, a farmer for rain, a knight before battle, a child for a father lost in plague. And in each tiny flame, their hope, their grief, their prayer was lifted toward heaven. There's something achingly beautiful about this. In a world so dark, so uncertain, where war and illness and poverty pressed down on every soul, the act of lighting a candle was both rebellion and surrender. A rebellion against the night, a surrender to the divine. Think of the wax, how it melted, slowly, as time passed, drip by drip, like hours falling away. But no one mourned the melting, because that too was part of the gift. The candle gave all of itself, quietly, patiently, until only the wick remained a blackened thread of memory. In many cathedrals, the paschal candle stood tall beside the altar. Lit once a year at Easter, it symbolized resurrection, the return of light after darkness. It was a moment of awe. Imagine it now. After a long winter, the cathedral completely dark, the congregation silent. Then, a single spark, a flame, carried down the aisle one step at a time. The light spreads, one candle to another. Dozens, then hundreds, until the whole space glows again. For those gathered, it was not just spectacle. It was rebirth. The flame was Christ, the wax his body, the light eternal hope. Even outside the great cathedrals, in the smaller parish churches, tucked into hilltop villages, candles played their part, flickering on altars built by stonemasons who would never be named, lighting the faces of weary travelers, comforting the dying, guiding the lost. In the monasteries, where silence reigned, the candle was both tool and companion. The monks would rise before dawn, their feet cold on stone, their breath mist in the air. They'd gather in the choir stalls, each with a single candle in hand, and begin matins, the early morning prayer. They didn't light the candles to see better. They lit them to be better, to center, to remember that they were not alone in the dark. For many scribes, candles were the only light by which to copy sacred texts. Hunched over vellum, ink slowly staining page, they labored not for glory, but for God. Every illuminated letter, every curling vine and gold leaf was done by candlelight, by patience, by devotion. They knew the risks, wax spilled, flames wavered, manuscripts were flammable, but still they lit the candle. Still they wrote, because light, however brief, was worth the danger. And when those same monks faced death, as all must, a candle was placed beside them. Its flame said what words could not, that the soul journeys on, that even in parting there is light. You may have heard of votive candles. Even now, in churches across the world, they burn. Tiny lights in red glass holders, each one a whisper of longing, a murmur of gratitude, a message carried on flame. The word votive comes from votum, meaning vow or promise. To light a votive candle was to make a quiet pact. I am here, I believe, I remember. And the cathedral, in its wisdom, held space for all of it. Grief, joy, fear, faith, all wrapped in light, all welcomed. Now, imagine you are sitting in one of those old wooden pews. The stone beneath you is cold, but you don't mind. Before you, a small candle glows. You don't need to speak. You don't need to pray, even. Just breathe and watch. Watch how the flame moves, not frantically, but curiously. Watch how it leans and returns, how it grows taller, then settles, like it's breathing with you. This is your cathedral now. No tourists, no clocks, just light, just stillness, just the slow, steady glow of ancient devotion. The Middle Ages are often remembered for their darkness, the wars, the plagues, the rigid hierarchies. But in the heart of that time, in the quiet corners of every village, city, and cloister, people lit candles. They lit them for each other, for the dead, for the future. They lit them believing that even the smallest light matters, that even one flame could hold back the night, and perhaps they were right. Perhaps tonight, as you listen, as your body rests and your thoughts soften, that same flame flickers inside you. Not a flame of faith, necessarily, but of wonder, of calm, of quiet. You don't need to visit a cathedral to feel it. You only need to be still, to let the noise fall away, to remember that long before electricity, long before screens and signals and glowing phones, people sat in silence. And let the candle speak, so let it speak to you now. Let it tell you that you're safe, that you're part of something vast and beautiful, that you can rest now. Let your breath slow. Let your eyes grow heavy. Let the soft golden glow of medieval candlelight wrap around your thoughts like a blanket. And no, you are not alone in the dark. You never have been. There's always been a flame, waiting, guiding softly, steadily home. And now, dear listener, the candles grow low. The last flame flickers softly in the quiet hush of the cathedral's stone heart. The golden glow fades, not with sadness, but with peace, like a song coming to its final note. The air is still, touched with the faint scent of melted wax and ancient stone, and the gentle warmth of something sacred that lingers, even as it disappears. You are safe here, wrapped in the same silence that held monks and pilgrims, queens and candle, makers the same darkness that was never feared because it held the promise of light. Tonight, you've walked among shadows touched by fire. You've wandered beneath vaulted ceilings and past the stained glass of forgotten saints. You've felt what it was to be small, and yet not alone, surrounded by the quiet breath of centuries. So let your eyes close now, let the echoes fade, let the stillness take you. As the cathedral rests, so can you. As the flame dims, so do your thoughts. As the night deepens, so does your calm. The world is quiet now. You are part of its stillness. Sleep well, gentle dreamer. The candles have done their work. Good night.